comrade. You did not murder my name at all. You got it perfectly spot on.
Okay, okay, thank
Um,
you.
it's I think listening to the earlier speakers, I think one of the things that's interesting about what's happening in South Africa at the moment is the attempt to shut down anybody who wants to respond to why we should not be having Afrophobia. And it's a concern not just for this issue, but also the country that South Africa will become. So I'm speaking as a lawyer who's represented different groups, like the families of the Marikana families, of the Marikana miners who died in 2012. We've represented informal traders in 2013. But as an organization, because I think there was a time when our constitution was popular, we also were able to benefit from that dividend. But then in the last 4 years, the organization has come under serious attack, especially by those who hold Afrophobic views or who are against migrants. And interestingly, the very first time as an organization we came under attack, it was over the closure of a market, the De Villiers market in the inner city of Johannesburg, which sells secondhand clothing. And this market was being shut down in a way that's unprocedural without following all the legal processes. But also, these were traders who the city had licensed, who had a right to be there. And in 2022, the first people that pointed the attack at our organization, and I'm sorry, I did not even go through to explain what the organization is, but the people we were providing legal services to these informal traders, and the first people to attack us were politicians within the city of Johannesburg who basically claimed that SERI had gone to court on behalf of migrants using South Africans as a cover up. And immediately, our organization was attacked. Uh, Death threats were made. There were threats to follow our staff home. We had to close our office. But the interesting thing about this is that then these politicians mobilized the public on Twitter, on Facebook to also come after us. And it took, I think this was in July 2022, it took us actually having a public press briefing and calling on support from civil society in South Africa, from the left in South Africa, and even from government to make these forces, which were actually very confident of their positions, to go back into the shadows. And so it's quite frightening to think that in 2026, the call that we made in 2022 to say, firstly, we believe in human rights for everyone. We believe in the universal enjoyment of human rights, and that as an organization will continue to represent whoever comes to seek our help for as long as their claims are just. And that stance that we took in 2022, we could get the Minister of Justice issuing a statement to say hands off SERI, where different actors in civil society coming to stand on our side. And then we fast forward 2026, where there's an attempt to almost isolate and silence anyone who will dare speak out. And this and it's also especially interesting because in 2023, we were then approached by four organizations. Kopanang Africa Against Xenophobia, Abahlali Basemjondolo, which represents informal settlement dwellers, the Inner City Federation, which represents unlawful occupiers in the inner city of Johannesburg, and the South African Informal Traders Forum. And when they approached us to bring an interdict to stop the actions of Operation Dudula, which at that time was probably the most visible and organized segment of this anti-migrant grouping. And when we brought that case, one, firstly, again, we had to make a call for solidarity, kind of saying, one,
Okay.
we are bringing this case on behalf of our clients, but also we know that our clients are bringing the case because
Think what it is. Maybe she was doing it
they
before and I think
believe
it was coming.
in
What do you mean by I don't know what to do?
they believe in the access of housing for all, health to all. And they were doing this at a time when Operation Dudula was blocking access to healthcare clinics, was at least at that time had managed to have even one school closed down because of their intimidation. They had that as Wazy explained earlier, there'd already been incidents of barbarism, people being attacked, women being having their businesses stopped. And so by the time we bring the case on behalf of these four organizations, again, it immediately there's an attack to say, look at this organization. So they jump the groups that we represent, which are all groups who are from the working class, who are poor, to point to us to say these lawyers in Braamfontein are attempting to silence us. But in any event, with that as it is, they then took a decision as Operation Dudula, which was, I think, the group leading at that time, not to oppose the litigation. And when they didn't oppose the litigation, we continued with the process. We then were, one, firstly, addressing them and their illegal actions, saying that the court must interdict them. But two, we're also calling on the government, because the problem of Afrophobia in South Africa also is one that has been sponsored by the state. And not only has the state sponsored it, but they've also been complicit in firstly making sure that when people have gone to the police to report groups like Operation Dudula, one, they've refused to open up those cases. In the one most tragic incident with the death of Mr. Nyati, instead of the police going into the community to investigate the death, the violent murder of Nyati, the police went in to ask people for documents. And every time you would meet Operation Dudula, they would have the police either ahead of them or behind them. And similarly, the Department of Home Affairs, which is the one that enforces the Immigration Act in South Africa. And so in that time, we then said, look, not only are you complicit as the state, but you're also failing in your obligations. Because again, the Constitution puts an obligation on the state to build social cohesion, to address racism, to address the other forms of hatred, which include and it's the already the obligation also addresses the issue of xenophobia. And we have a national action plan to fight against racism and xenophobia. And that national action plan is gathering dust. The plans that have been put up are gathering dust. And we said to the state must be held accountable for failing to implement that plan. And in November last year, at a time when, again, the Operation Dudula had again started taking actions to kind of say they have public support and that their position is popular. The Johannesburg High Court came out and said, actually, this is unlawful. You cannot, as a civilian, ask someone else to show you whether they are documented in this country, they have rights to be in this country. All these unlawful actions are interdicted. And then the court also addressed the state, say the state actually must attend to the National Action Plan and address the issue of social cohesion. That was in November. But then almost 7 months later, not even, we are in a situation not only where one, the groups feel more emboldened, but the public arena, anywhere, whether it's in traditional media, in social media, there's almost this idea that the position of wanting migrants to leave is a position of all South Africans. And for me, one of the concerns, and I'm glad that there's this discussion to say how do we address this, is how those who are silent are read to be affirming the position that's being put forward by March on March, by Operation Dudula, by the Action Essays. And therefore, for me, it is, I think, a moment that requires us to insist that those who are opposed to these Afrophobic actions to stand up, to be visible, and also for us to address head on the reasons why we find ourselves having these challenges. Chairperson, I will leave it there. Thank you so much.